marks the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It's a day when we are reminded that worldwide, 1 in 3 women and girls experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime.
Buried for 120 years, worth £250,000. And Queen Camilla just casually wore it like it was nothing. You won't believe what she found hidden in the royal vaults. Jewelry so valuable, so secretive, that even Queen Elizabeth refused to touch it. Pieces that vanished during Queen Victoria's reign, and everyone thought were gone forever.
But today is also a day that can give us hope. Together we can and we must eliminate violence against women. Each one of us has a part to play, to do everything in our power to raise awareness, to reach in to others, and to support and be inspired by those very brave survivors.
A Fabergé masterpiece that 3 queens owned but never wore, not once. And wait until you see the shocking diamond stomacher that appeared out of nowhere. Nobody knew it existed. Today, we're exposing the insanely expensive jewels Camilla revealed. This is absolutely wild. The story really starts with jewelry from someone whose collection Camilla clearly understands and appreciates: the Queen Mother. Before she began digging into century-old mysteries, Camilla spent years working through pieces that had been sitting quietly in storage for decades. What makes this fascinating is the clear pattern that emerges. These weren't random selections from a massive collection. Every piece she chose had a compelling story, and most of them hadn't been seen by the public in living memory. It seems Camilla is drawn to jewelry that carries both beauty and history in equal measure. And we can see this pattern forming surprisingly early in her royal life. Back in 2007, when Camilla was still the Duchess of Cornwall, she appeared at Trooping the Colour wearing a brooch that immediately caught the attention of jewelry historians. It was an Art Deco piece from the mid-1930s, featuring diamonds and dark brown topazes arranged in that distinctive geometric style of the era. This wasn't something anyone had seen recently. According to historical records, one of the earliest documented sightings was in March 1938, when the Queen Mother wore it during a visit to the Battersea and Wandsworth districts of London. She was photographed leaving a housing estate on York Road after meeting residents alongside King George VI. After that appearance in the 1930s, the brooch essentially disappeared from public view. There are no records of the Queen Mother wearing it again after that single outing, and it never appeared on Queen Elizabeth II or Princess Margaret either. For nearly 50 years, this Art Deco treasure sat completely unused until Camilla decided to bring it back. She didn't save it for some grand state occasion either. She just wore it to a parade, paired it with pearls, and made it feel natural again. Since then, she's worn it to her royal tour of Canada in 2009 and to the Together at Christmas Carol service in 2022. That same instinct for revival led her to something with even deeper historical meaning. In 2015, during a visit to New Zealand, Camilla appeared wearing a diamond thistle brooch that hadn't been seen for over 60 years. This wasn't just any forgotten piece. It was pure Scottish symbolism, featuring 2 diamond thistles intertwined with scrolling leaves. The Queen Mother had worn this brooch regularly during the 1940s, particularly during the war years when she pinned it to her hats. Historical photographs show her wearing it when visiting airborne troops before D-Day in 1944, and at various Scottish events throughout the 1950s. Then, like so many other pieces, it simply vanished from view. When Camilla brought it back, she made deliberate choices about when to wear it. She chose distinctly Scottish occasions: the opening of the Scottish Parliament in 2021, Queen Elizabeth's farewell ceremony in Edinburgh in 2022, and during Holyrood Week celebrations. The connection between the piece and its Scottish heritage remained completely intact, just with a new wearer carrying it forward into the modern era. But perhaps the most intriguing story in this collection involves a piece that the Queen Mother herself never wore publicly. In 1956, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev presented the Queen Mother with an exquisite Fabergé brooch shaped like a spray of lily of the valley during his official visit to Britain. This was a diplomatic gift during the height of the Cold War, beautifully crafted with unmistakable Fabergé artistry. Here's what makes this truly fascinating. To the best of anyone's knowledge, the Queen Mother never wore it in public. Whether it was diplomatically sensitive given the political climate, or simply not to her personal taste, this masterpiece remained hidden for decades. But Camilla changed that completely. She's made this brooch one of her most frequently worn pieces, taking it to her daughter Laura's wedding in 2006, on trips to Colombia and Canada, and to countless other events. It's remarkable that we get to see this beautiful piece regularly now, rather than having it locked away forever in some vault. This pattern of reviving personal pieces becomes even clearer with the Minoru brooch. This charming horseshoe-shaped pin spells out the name of King Edward VII's most successful racehorse. After Minoru's famous Derby win in 1909, the king was so delighted that he commissioned several commemorative jewels, but the precise history of the brooch Camilla wears today remains something of a mystery. Was it the original pin given to the American jockey, which somehow found its way back to the royal family decades later? Or was it a different version made for a close friend? Its exact journey into Camilla's collection is still a puzzle that historians are trying to solve. What we do know is that this is jewelry we don't associate with Queen Elizabeth II. It has become a personal signature for Camilla, a perfect choice for a day at the races, and a wonderful connection to her husband's fun-loving great-grandfather. The story becomes even more touching when we look at how Camilla has handled pieces that required adaptation. In 2012, she debuted a necklace with one of the most moving histories in royal jewelry. It's the Queen Mother's amethyst sautoir, originally given as a wedding gift in 1923 by Queen Alexandra herself. The gift even came with a handwritten note that read, "For my dear future granddaughter Elizabeth from her after-grandmother." This necklace was designed in the fashionable sautoir style of the 1920s, very long and meant to be worn looped or knotted. But fashion changed over the decades, and there's only one recorded instance of the Queen Mother wearing it publicly. That single appearance was during court mourning after Queen Alexandra's death in 1925. Purple was acceptable for certain phases of mourning, and the personal connection made it particularly appropriate for that occasion. After that, it disappeared for decades. When Camilla brought it back, she made what many consider to be a brilliant decision. Instead of preserving it exactly as it was and leaving it unwearable by modern standards, she had it shortened to a more contemporary length. She kept the heart-shaped amethyst pendant, the seed pearls, and all the original elements intact, but made it work with today's fashion. She wore it to the London premiere of Skyfall, paired with her own amethyst earrings. This demonstrates real respect for the piece, honoring its history, while ensuring it can actually be worn and appreciated rather than remaining a museum piece. This balance between preservation and practicality appears again in how Camilla uses the Britannia brooch. The Queen Mother had worn this diamond, ruby, and sapphire piece, which also serves as the cap badge of the Royal Norfolk Regiment, but Camilla has worn it in contexts that seem to emphasize the Britannia symbolism rather than the military connection. In fact, just last year in 2024, she chose to wear this brooch for two very specific events, celebrating female achievement and resilience. She wore it once to the Gaia Center, which supports women experiencing gender-based violence, and again when hosting the all-female maiden yacht crew, who became the first women's team to win an around-the-world race. This is interesting because Britannia, after all, is depicted as a warrior goddess, and these occasions seem to connect directly with that powerful female symbolism, rather than its military origins. What becomes clear from looking at all these pieces together is that Camilla isn't just randomly pulling jewelry from storage. There's a deliberate pattern here. She's finding pieces with deep historical connections, pieces that tell stories, and pieces that had been forgotten despite their beauty and significance. She's bringing them back into public view, and in many cases giving them new meaning for modern audiences, while respecting their original context and history. Having worked through the Queen Mother's collection, Camilla began reaching deeper into royal history, into jewelry boxes that belong to the most legendary queens in British history. The time frames we're talking about here aren't just decades anymore. We're talking about entire centuries of silence. Perhaps the most emotionally resonant place to start is with a piece that connects 4 generations of royal women through a single extraordinary story. In December 2023, during the Christmas service at Sandringham, Camilla appeared wearing a cross-shaped brooch that immediately caught the attention of jewelry experts. This wasn't just another forgotten piece. This was the raspberry pip brooch, though calling it a raspberry pip seems almost insulting to its dignity. It looks exactly like what it is, a Georgian cross set with white and yellow gemstones that gleam with the warmth of topaz and the brilliance of diamonds. What makes this piece so remarkable is its journey through time. It belonged originally to the Countess of Strathmore, the Queen Mother's mother, who received it as a wedding gift in 1881. Think about that date for a moment. 1881. This brooch witnessed the entire Victorian era, both world wars, the rise and fall of empires. There's photographic evidence of the Countess wearing it in 1927, walking through the gardens of St. Paul's Waldenbury with her granddaughter, the young Princess Elizabeth. But then, like so many pieces, it simply vanished. When the Countess died in 1938, her will specifically mentioned "my yellow diamond cross" as a bequest to her daughter, Queen Elizabeth, the future Queen Mother. Yet remarkably, neither the Queen Mother nor Queen Elizabeth II ever wore it publicly. For almost a century, this family heirloom sat in darkness until Camilla found it. She chose to debut it at Christmas service, where its cross shape felt perfectly appropriate, and she's continued wearing it to meaningful occasions since then. This pattern of resurrection becomes even more dramatic when we look at what Camilla accomplished with Queen Mary's jewelry collection. In June 2025 at Royal Ascot, she stunned the jewelry world by wearing something that had been missing for 89 years, the Rothschild diamond watch brooch. This isn't just any brooch, it's a masterpiece of Victorian craftsmanship that tells a story of friendship between 2 remarkable women. In 1893, Alice de Rothschild gave this extraordinary piece to Princess May of Teck as a wedding gift. Alice was part of the famous Rothschild banking family, and she shared Queen Mary's passion for collecting beautiful objects. The brooch itself is an engineering marvel, a diamond bow from which suspends a floral pendant that's entirely set with diamonds. But here's the secret. Nestled at the heart of that pendant is a tiny hidden watch. It's shaped like the Rose of York, and it represents the kind of craftsmanship that we simply don't see anymore. Queen Mary treasured it, wearing it on official occasions, including her tour of South Africa in 1901. The Queen Mother inherited it and wore it at least once in July 1936, during a visit to the British Industries House. But after that single appearance, nothing. For 89 years, this mechanical and artistic masterpiece gathered dust while royal watchers could only dream of seeing it again. When Camilla chose it for the final day of Royal Ascot 2025, it felt like witnessing a small miracle. Perhaps the most puzzling story in this collection involves a brooch that Queen Elizabeth II owned for her entire reign but wore exactly once. Queen Mary's emerald and sapphire flower brooch is breathtakingly beautiful. A radiant diamond center surrounded by overlapping petals set with vivid emeralds and sapphires. It creates the image of a jeweled flower blooming in perpetual twilight. Queen Mary loved this piece. She wore it proudly in 1909 when she received the Russian imperial family during Cow's Week, and there are stunning portraits of her wearing it by Arthur William Debenham. When she died in 1953, it passed to her granddaughter, Queen Elizabeth II. And here's where the story becomes truly mysterious. Queen Elizabeth wore it exactly once in 1997 at the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Once, in a 70-year reign. Why? We'll never know. Perhaps it held memories that were too personal, or perhaps it simply wasn't her style. The brooch appeared in Angela Kelly's book, Dressing the Queen, in 2012, photographed among other treasures, but never worn. Then, in March 2024, Camilla chose it for Easter Sunday service at St. George's Chapel. After decades of silence, this flower brooch was finally blooming in the light again. We've seen jewelry that disappeared for decades, pieces that vanished for nearly a century. But what comes next represents something even more extraordinary. In March 2024, when Camilla represented the royal family at the Commonwealth Day service, while King Charles was receiving cancer treatment, she made what might be the most stunning jewelry debut in recent royal history. She wore Queen Alexandra's aquamarine brooch, and this piece is pure Fabergé artistry. It was likely created around 1904, when Alexandra was celebrating her 60th birthday. It features a large aquamarine set within an intricate diamond heart, from which a second heart-shaped aquamarine hangs delicately from a diamond chain. The craftsmanship is extraordinary, the kind of work that made Fabergé legendary. Experts estimate its value at £250,000. But here's what makes this absolutely breathtaking. Queen Alexandra may have commissioned it, but we have no photographs of her wearing it. When she died in 1925, it passed to Queen Mary. No public appearances. Queen Mary died in 1953, and it went to Queen Elizabeth II, who owned it for nearly 70 years and never wore it publicly, not once. This masterpiece sat in the royal vaults for over 120 years, known only to archivists and historians who had access to photographic inventories. The timing of Camilla's choice feels significant too. Aquamarine is the traditional stone for 19th wedding anniversaries, symbolizing enduring love and devotion. She was representing Charles during his health challenges, wearing a stone that speaks to lasting commitment. Whether that was intentional or coincidental, it carries deep meaning. The complexity of royal jewelry inheritance becomes even more apparent when we look at pieces like Princess Marie-Louise's diamond sunburst brooch. This stunning example shows how jewelry can travel through both direct and collateral family lines across generations. Princess Marie-Louise was Queen Victoria's granddaughter, and this striking starburst brooch originally belonged to Victoria herself, before being bequeathed to Marie-Louise in 1901. When Marie-Louise died in 1956, most of her jewelry went to different branches of the family. But this particular brooch went to the Queen Mother, who wore it occasionally through the 1960s and 1970s. After the Queen Mother's death in 2002, it passed to Queen Elizabeth II, where it essentially disappeared from public view. Until 2021, when it was selected for Camilla, still Duchess of Cornwall at the time, to wear to the premiere of No Time to Die at the Royal Albert Hall, a brooch shaped like a blazing star, worn to celebrate British cinema. And then we reach perhaps the most historically significant piece in this entire collection, Queen Victoria's Hesse Diamond Jubilee brooch. This heart-shaped treasure, set with diamonds spelling out 60 in Cyrillic characters and featuring 3 blue sapphires, represents one of the most touching gifts in royal history. It was presented to Victoria in 1897 to celebrate her Diamond Jubilee by her Hessian grandchildren, the surviving children of her late daughter, Princess Alice. The givers were the reigning Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra of Russia, Grand Duke Ernest Louis of Hesse and his wife, Grand Duke Sergei and Grand Duchess Elizabeth of Russia, and Prince and Princess Louis of Battenberg. We even know the intimate details of this gift because the original Fabergé invoice, dated May 29, 1897, still exists in the Russian Imperial Archives. It shows how the cost was divided among the family members, with the Tsar and Tsarina contributing the largest share, and also providing the 3 beautiful blue sapphires personally from their own collection. This brooch literally represents the last golden moment before that family was torn apart by revolution and war. After Victoria died in 1901, the brooch was designated as an heirloom of the crown, but it essentially vanished from public view for over a century. When Camilla wore it to Queen Elizabeth II's funeral in September 2022, it felt like history completing a circle. Victoria's great-great-great-granddaughter-in-law was honoring Elizabeth II with a gift that had been made to celebrate Victoria's unprecedented reign, a reign that Elizabeth would eventually surpass. We now reach perhaps the most intriguing chapter in Camilla's jewelry archaeology, the pieces that belong directly to Queen Elizabeth II, but remained mysteries even to those who followed her reign most closely. These discoveries reveal something fascinating. even the most documented royal life can hold surprising secrets. The story begins with a moment that would have been deeply personal to young Princess Elizabeth. In March 1942, just 3 months after her 16th birthday, she was confirmed by the Archbishop of Canterbury in the private chapel at Windsor Castle. It was wartime, so the ceremony was small and intimate, with just her parents, Princess Margaret, Queen Mary, and Princess Royal in attendance. Among the confirmation presents she received was a delicate diamond and turquoise brooch from her grandmother, Queen Mary. Here's what makes this fascinating. We have no record whatsoever of Queen Elizabeth II ever wearing this brooch publicly. Not once in 70 years of reign. Not even in private portraits that we know of. For 8 decades, this personal gift from one queen to another sat unused, while the world had no idea it existed. When Camilla wore it for her German state visit in March 2023, royal jewelry experts were stunned. Here was a piece that had been waiting in the vault since 1942, carrying all the weight of that wartime confirmation ceremony that grandmothers love. And yet, it had never seen the light of day until Camilla found it. This pattern of discovering Queen Elizabeth's unused treasures becomes even more perplexing when we look at pieces from her younger years that simply fell out of favor. Take the Cartier gold and sapphire flower brooches. These weren't ancient heirlooms. They were modern pieces, bought by her parents in 1942 and 1945. Princess Elizabeth wore them enthusiastically during her first tour of Canada in 1951, pinning them to her outfits in Windsor and Kingston, Ontario. She took them to Canada again in 1957, wore them to church services in Ottawa, and even brought them on her state visit to Washington. But then, mysteriously, they largely disappeared from her regular rotation for decades. They made brief reappearances in the 1990s, but by the late 1990s, they had vanished again. When Camilla wore them to the Royal Maundy service in March 2024, it felt like seeing old friends who had been away for far too long. Perhaps the most emotionally powerful discovery involves a piece with the most innocent of origins. In November 2023, when Camilla attended the Royal Ballet's performance of Don Quixote, she wore a delicate pendant featuring a diamond ribbon from which 2 gem-set clusters were suspended, one with a pink topaz, the other with a sapphire. Buckingham Palace confirmed it had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II, but nobody could recall seeing it before. Then came the revelation. Royal jewelry enthusiasts discovered a 1936 portrait of 8-year-old Princess Elizabeth wearing this very necklace. There she was in Marcus Adams's famous photograph, this tiny girl wearing what appears to be the same pendant, though in the original there seems to be a pearl drop as well. For nearly 90 years, this childhood treasure had been sitting quietly in the collection, carrying all those memories of a little princess who had no idea she would one day be queen. But perhaps the most dramatic moment in this entire treasure hunt came in December 2023, during the diplomatic reception at Buckingham Palace. Without warning, Camilla appeared wearing something that made jewelry experts around the world do double takes, a massive diamond stomacher that absolutely nobody had ever seen before. This wasn't a revival, this was a revelation. The Belle Epoque-style piece, with its elaborate diamond tassels and intricate construction, clearly belonged to the early 20th century. Buckingham Palace confirmed it came from the Queen Mother's collection and was likely part of the famous Greville bequest from 1942, when Mrs. Ronnie Greville left the Queen Mother over 60 pieces of jewelry. But here's what's extraordinary. If this stomacher had been in the royal collection since 1942, why had nobody ever seen it? Not on the Queen Mother, not in any of her portraits, not even mentioned in catalogs of her jewelry. It was as if this magnificent piece had been waiting in complete secrecy for over 80 years, known only to a handful of people with access to the deepest royal vaults. This discovery reveals something important. Our understanding of royal jewelry collections might be just the tip of the iceberg. If something this significant could remain secret for 8 decades, what else might be waiting in those vaults? What strikes most about this entire archaeological project is how it reveals the true scale and mystery of royal collections. We thought we knew what Queen Elizabeth II owned, what she wore, what she treasured. But Camilla has shown us that even the most documented reign in history held secrets. Jewelry that sat unused for decades, pieces that were never photographed, treasures that were known only to those with the keys to the deepest vaults. And somehow, Camilla seems to have those keys now, and the instinct to know exactly when and where to use them. Which of these revivals is most surprising? Is it the sheer artistry of a piece like Queen Alexandra's aquamarine brooch, or the deep emotional history of the Hesse Diamond Jubilee brooch? And perhaps the most intriguing question of all, what kind of treasure might still be waiting to make its debut? If you've enjoyed this journey into the royal vaults, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for reading.